they have nowhere else to go, they have nowhere else to stay. And those stories, I think, really tug at the heartstrings of why we do what we do. We want to make sure that those people have a voice again and have the opportunity to regain their independence. I'm Tiffiny Gregory. I'm the Operations Manager for the Modern Slavery Victim Care Contract at the Salvation Army. So back in 2020, I was furloughed from my role as a retail manager. I'd been working in retail for around 20 years, and I decided to use that time to look into my family history, understand a little bit about my ancestry. I originally come from Australia, and my family have background in England and Mauritius. So I spent some time looking into my maternal grandmother's side and discovered that my grandfather had actually been looked after by a very famous doctor in Mauritius, Dr. Maurice Curie, who actually founded the Labour Party in Mauritius and did a lot of work advocating for labour rights and slaves in Mauritius. It was quite shocking to hear some of the stories and some of the experiences that family members of mine had been through and had worked around, and the conditions that they were having to live in within Mauritius. So to hear that one of my family members took a stand and really advocated against that was quite inspiring. And when the opportunity came to join the Salvation Army, I knew I had to go for it. I've had a number of stories regarding survivors who have particularly come in on the promise of false labour. They've been promised work in the UK, opportunities beyond their wildest dreams, and when they arrive, unfortunately, that's not the case, and they are usually entrapped within those settings. They've come into the country, they've had their identity taken from them, their passports taken, they have nowhere else to go, they have nowhere else to stay. And those stories, I think, really tug at the heartstrings of why we do what we do. We want to make sure that those people have a voice again and have the opportunity to regain their independence. We have had a particular case where a woman was identified to our services who had been trafficked internationally into the UK on the promise of work. She was held as a domestic servitude, as a domestic slave, and unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to get out of that circumstance for a number of years. She managed to escape through the help of a member of the community who had identified that something didn't seem quite right in terms of her demeanour, the way she was coming and going without really engaging with the outside world very much. She didn't have a social circle. There was a lot of sort of red flags there for this individual. She was referred into our support services, and part of that process then was really helping to unpick that trauma, unpick her circumstances, unpick her story, and really get to a point where she was able to identify where she wanted to go next and how she wanted to progress. A lot of the work I do around the advocacy of modern slavery is to work with people with lived experience, and I've had a number of experiences of being involved in events where we have tapped into those lived experiences to really raise awareness and highlight the real stories behind modern slavery, particularly here in the UK, and how that translates to people moving on through their journey through our support services into a life of sustained freedom.